If you are in the market for a couple of side tables or nightstands, consider an old vintage vanity instead. First up, I need to take it apart. I'm removing all the drawers, then studying how the vanity is built. Since this vanity is nailed together, I'm wedging a pry bar between the backboard and vanity, then hitting it with a rubber mallet to pull the boards apart. Now I'm checking where all the nails and joins are and removing whatever nails I can with a nail remover tool. However, for the most part, the crowbars, lots of pounding, and finally pulling apart the pieces by hand did the trick. Now I'm removing all the knobs from the drawers and attaching the original screws into the back so they don't get lost. I'm placing all the drawers onto some butcher paper with the varnished sides facing up along with the vanity. To strip off the varnish, I'm using a product called QCS by Stripwell, which is a non-toxic remover. I'm spraying the remover on all the varnished tops of the vanity and drawer tops, then allowing the product to sit for about 10 minutes. Using a putty knife, I'm scraping off the varnish. Most of the pieces needed 2 passes for everything. Now using a surface cleanser, I'm spraying it wherever the varnish was removed, then wiping the furniture clean with a rag. Next up is repairing the sides. Using an orbital sander, I'm sanding over the damaged areas of the nightstands, plus also scuff sanding the rest of the sides to prepare them for the next step. I'm using a putty knife to apply wood filler to smooth out any indents, nooks, and crannies. Some of the holes were very deep, so they required 2 coats with drying time in between. After several days of drying time, I'm sanding the putty smooth, then following up with an orbital sander to areas that needed a little extra work. Now I'm removing all the sanding dust using a tack cloth. Choosing a deep and beautiful paint color called Cast Iron by Fusion Mineral Paint, I'm painting all the small trim work with a smaller artist's brush. Since the sides are smooth and large, I'm choosing to paint them using a high-quality Stahlmeister velour roller I pick up through Fusion Mineral Paint to achieve a flawless finish with no brush strokes. I'm rolling on the paint with long, even strokes with an attempt to always work against a wet paint edge. What works best is to roll on all the paint, then slowly roll over it again from end to end with no stops in between to achieve the smoothest finish possible. To paint the drawer pulls, I'm using the screws to hold the knobs while I paint, then setting them down on egg cartons to dry. Now that the paint has set, I'm removing the painter's tape to allow the piece to completely dry. To protect the fronts of the drawers and the tops of the nightstands, I'm using Stain and Finishing Oil in Natural by Fusion Mineral Paint. This is a very easy wipe-on, wipe-off product to work with, and the durability it offers is floor quality. I'm brushing on the Stain and Finishing Oil until my chosen surface is completely covered, allowing it to sit for a few minutes, then wiping the product back off again with a clean lint-free rag. I allow this product to dry overnight. Once the paint has cured for about 30 days, I'll also be adding a coat of natural Stain and Finishing Oil on that as well for added furniture durability. And the final result are 2 absolutely stunning high-quality nightstands or side tables that are customized to suit my home. The tone of wood now looks so fresh and rich and feels as smooth as silk, which really pops against the decadent deep tone of cast iron, making this a gorgeous and timeless combination. Thanks for watching Home Talk, and we'll see you next time.
My neighbor had an old dresser across the street, but I knew I could fix it up, and the first thing I got to do is get rid of all the rotted and torn up materials. Then I got to take off all of the hardware and the doors on the bottom. I'm not going to need those for the transformation I'm going to make. I also want to get rid of the hardware on the drawers. Now on the top of this, it was pretty beat up. It had been out in the rain and the sun. So I started with 80 grit sandpaper and started going up and down. Once I got it all sanded off, I also needed to go with 120 up to 220. Now sanding produces a lot of dust. So the next thing I did was make sure I got my air hose out and got all the dust off. Got to make sure we get that clean as good as possible. Now I wanted to get rid of the railings that were on the bottom because I don't need those. I want an open concept. So I cut each one of those and pulled them apart. Next, I got some Lawan plywood. This is great for shelving. I wanted to put this on the bottom because it's also waterproof just in case anything spills on it. Once I get it in place, just some small staples will hold it exactly where I need it. Next, it was time to prep for painting. I'm going to fill all the holes from all the hinges and everything like that. And then it's time to go ahead and put the primer on. Primer always goes before paint. You need something to adhere it to the cabinet. The next step was to put some good high quality cabinet paint on there. Once that primer's done, you just go ahead and put all the paint on. This one took 3 coats. Next, it was time for staining. I wanted to add some shelves on the middle and I wanted to go with a dark stain, so that's why I went with walnut. So I'm going to do all the boards for shelving and that Luan plywood on the bottom. It's going to get some stain also because I want every one of them to match. Then it was time to do the top. Once it's all sanded down, I put the stain on there, and it took actually 2 coats of stain. You ever see that professional finish that gives it just a durable, clean look? Well, that's what this polyurethane is for. You put that on, and it's going to give it a nice, shiny look to it, and it's going to make it nice and durable. A couple of coats of those. Now it's time back for that middle shelf. I took those boards that I stained earlier, and I put them in place and used a few brad nails to hold them down. Now it's time for some new backing. I got some of that Luan plywood extra hanging out, so I grabbed some of that and cut it to size. Again, some staples all the way around the edges will hold it in place. Now it's time to get some new hardware. This is really inexpensive, and it changes the look, and it's black so it stands out. Now the drawers need some liners in there because it's kind of rotted out, but it looks good. We're going to close that up. You remember that old dresser in the driveway? Now look at this. What a transformation. I love how it turned into this kitchen island buffet table. It just turned out absolutely amazing. There's no reason to throw an old piece of furniture out when you can look at it, use your imagination, and upcycle it into a work of art. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did, and I hope it inspired you to do your own upcycle project. I had a friend that was getting rid of their small nightstand. The drawers are in rough shape, so we're going to go ahead and just remove those. What I want is the cavity of the dresser. First thing I got to do is I got to cut off the little support bar that goes across the side. The best thing to do is to use a Sawzall. Now, if you don't have this mechanical tool, that's okay. Just use a regular saw. It's not hard, but what we want to do is open up the inside. Once we get those cut, we can remove the drawer slides, those metal pieces that are inside, usually using a screw or anything like that. Once we get it removed, the next step is to paint. Now, this gives me a chance to give you some fresh ideas on some good painting tips. When painting furniture, you always want to put out a coat of primer first. This gives the paint something to adhere to. I also use a brush. It's not that big of a project, so using a brush will allow me to get inside all the little grooves. Now on the side, you can use a foam roller. Since I already had the brush out, I went ahead and used it. Once I get the outside painted in 2 coats, on the inside I want to make it a little bit cleaner for my pet. And the reason for that is they leave dog hair, dirt, everything like that. By putting this wallpaper and contact paper, it's going to make it easier to clean and make it a smooth surface. It's easy to apply, just cut it to the size that you need it, and then you'll start pulling the backing off. As you're going along, use your hand or a small squeegee to make sure you get all the wrinkles out. But once I got it on, it gave a nice, clean, smooth surface, just like this. Now it was time to put it in place. When I'm sitting at my desk, my dogs like to come in and say hi. But with this little place right here, I turned the dresser upside down, made some little pillows for him, put it on the top and the bottom. I was actually impressed with how it looked in the corner. Actually looked really good once I got the pillows in and everything. It was a great color. It matched the side of the walls. Now it's time for Millie, my little tiny little poodle. She absolutely didn't know what to do with it, but I think she started to warm up to it. She's kind of curious because she likes to perch like a cat up high. And look at that. She absolutely loved it. It's almost like she's nesting. She's just kind of making it her own and fluffing out that pillow. I hope this inspired you to build and upcycle your own dresser or furniture.